Good morning once again, good people of a great nation. It's a pleasure to have you join us for the second and concluding segment on Development Focus with Jude Ojo on ITV. We just finished the discussion session on role of citizens in elections and democratic sustainability. Now we'll be talking corruption. There is no way we'll talk about even elections in Nigeria that we will not talk about electoral or political corruption. This administration of President Muhammadu Buhari has one out of 3 pillars of its campaign ahead of 2015 general election. He talked about the fight against corruption. That's what we will be appraising this morning. And I have an anti-corruption czar from the civil society angle. I call him my Oga, is Dr. Wise. You are welcome on the show.
Thank you very much, Jide.
So, Dr. Wise is the Executive Director of CITAD, Center for Information Technology in Kano, and I just put on him in Abuja. I said, you must come and tell us what you've been doing. So, Doc, your overall appraiser of the fight against corruption in Nigeria, what would that be?
Well, I'm going to say that it's too much noise and not much substance. What we have been hearing over the time is that the government has been fighting corruption. And what we are seeing in reality is that there is more corruption in this country than in the previous...
How come? How so?
I think that there are 2 things are important. The first is that the government has personalized and politicized its own political agenda. In other words, that it is Buhari who is fighting corruption and not the Nigerians. So Buhari is not interested in partnering with other segments of the society to fight corruption. It's simply him. It's his own agenda. And you cannot fight corruption without the people. The citizens are the real forces who can report corruption, who can understand when corruption is taking place, who know where corruption is taking place, and who know what action to take, and not government. Government is the locale where corruption takes place, and that is where corruption is hidden. So you don't expect the people who are benefiting from corruption to be the leaders of fighting them corruption. So that is one fundamental mistake that this government is doing, to think that it can fight corruption without involving Nigerians, without getting the commitments of Nigerians. The second thing is that I don't think the government is listening to what people are saying. If for 5 years you've been running your strategy and you are not succeeding, it's time to sit down and say, look, let me reflect. Let me listen to what others are saying. Let me listen to the evaluation people are doing and find out whether, in fact, my own strategies are not working and that there are alternatives that I need to do. And I think that this is not what this government is doing. It's simply a one-track strategy. Whether it's working or not, it's what it's doing. But it has missed a lot of opportunities to do so. For instance, 2 years or 3 years back, we had the Panama Papers. That was an opportunity for government to really sit down, reflect, because all sorts of aspects of corruption were embedded in the Panama Papers. Whether it's money laundering, whether it's tax evasion, whether it's illegal shareholding in the foreign companies, whether it's non-declaration of assets, and whether it's circumventing national laws to launder money across. So you see that you could have used that opportunity to sit down and talk about reforms and also discipline those, they prosecute those people who have been involved, but we missed that opportunity. We saw the Paradise Papers came and went the same way, and now we have Pandora. Probably if Nigerians don't take action, it would also be swept under the carpet. So I think that in general, the fight against corruption is not succeeding.
Okay, so let me ask for your take. You are, for some over 10 years, you are a lecturer at Bayero University, Kano. Before you left, what will you say about corruption within the academic sector? What's your take as a former insider?
I should think that the university system is not an island. It's part and parcel of the Nigerian society. Corruption has become so pervasive in every sector of Nigerian society. So you can't expect the universities to be different. And what we see is that every aspect of corruption that we know outside the academic system is also there, whether it's in the form of sex for grades, or sex for marks, or even sex for admission, or whether it's ghost workers, or whether it's vice chancellors siphoning and privatizing the money that is meant for the development of
the running of the schools.
Exactly, So it's manifest in various forms in terms of recruitment, in terms of even promotion. Certain standards have been bastardized. So you don't expect the system to.
Was that the frustration that made you leave the academia?
I think that partly it was incipient at that time, but I think that what I saw was that you have spent decades. Actually, I've spent more than 10 years in the university system. You've spent so many years working with colleagues, trying to reform the system, improve what it is. And then suddenly your colleagues become interested, wanting to become vice chancellors, wanting to become directors, and so forth. And you realize that you are not fighting yourselves. Your own colleagues whom you were in the trenches over a couple of years ago, now they are the people you are fighting. Sometimes it's even your junior colleagues that you have helped to mentor, who have aspired to become deans, directors, and so forth. And I realized that, hold it, I don't think I'm going to spend my life simply fighting the petty quarrels over reforms of the system. Now, if Nigerians don't want to commit themselves to a system that they aspire, they want, then I don't think that I have the responsibility of carrying that load. But I also think that if you want to solve the crisis in our educational system, it's not just in the university system, it's also in the wider society. So unless we are able to improve governance, leadership selection at various levels, then they will not be able to make impact in terms of reforming our educational system. This is because at different sectors you have commissioners of education, you have ministers of education, and if they don't have understanding of what the academic system is, what it should be, then you are not going to make headway in terms of.
Is it good to describe you as a rebel, an activist, or a socialist? Which of them fits your characterization? Because I've had people describe you in different ways. Does it bother you?
Well, I always don't carry labels. I think that labels are just some shortcuts that don't tell the reality of what people are.
Okay, so you left Bayero University and you co-founded CITAD. What's the motivation behind setting up CITAD in Kano?
Well, let me tell you a story. In 1984, along with one colleague, now is Professor Ibiemi, is in the University of Ilorin.
Okay.
We introduced the first IT course in Nigeria University System, Information Technology, at Bayero University, Kano. And I was teaching that course for 2 to 3 years. And then suddenly NUC, that's Nigeria University Commission, came up with what we call the standardization of academic programs. It was like making universities to look like secondary schools, because then they said every university, every department of political science must teach the same thing, whether you are in Ibadan or whether you are in Sokoto. Every department of agriculture should teach the same, whether you are in the desert or whether you are in the forest, meaning that your agricultural problems and the issues are quite different.
So there is no variety, there is no context.
No creativity, no innovation, nothing at all. So one of the things that NUC did was like say, hey, this information technology course is not useful. Yeah.
At that time?
Yes. So this was 1986. And he said we should stop teaching that. So I felt very bad. And so I moved out of the university and set up what I call, with a few colleagues, the Computer Literacy Project, which was essentially taking away the course that I was teaching in the university and to create a space for me to continue teaching it. Since you can't allow me to teach it in the university, I could then teach it outside the university for academics who are interested to come and learn, for students who are interested in come, and for the wider society. And so that was the genesis of how we started CITAD. And with time, of course, we realized computer literacy for what? What purpose? And so we needed to give it a focus, and that's how we ended up having an organization that is called Center for Information Technology and Development, meaning that the ICT
for development. So CITAD has been around for about 20 years or more, and you are one force to reckon with when it comes to civil society in Kano, and even you occupy a permissive place in information technology development, capacity development. So now you've engaged in a wide range of anti-corruption activities or crusade. What impact do you think those anti-corruption engagement has been able to achieve?
I think that when we focus our lens on the anti-corruption, the first message or question we ask ourselves is that what can we do differently that others have not been doing? We realize that the way in which people are speaking and talking about corruption is so much an abstract thing. You go to a village where the typical citizens there, the largest amount of money he had seen is probably 1,000 or 2,000 naira. And then you are talking about billions have been stolen. You know, he or she can't even comprehend what you mean by that amount of money. And you expect him or her to be worried about the corruption. So we say, look, we need to reflect and think about how do we pass the message about corruption. We need to make citizens to understand the link, the nexus between these living conditions and what corruption is doing. So you need to speak corruption in terms of the quality of education and access to education that citizens get, the type of medical health care, the
so we decide to humanize the information.
Exactly, you know, and so that's for us, we think, was the most important thing to do. And that the impact is that now citizens are able to make that connection. Look, because of corruption, there's no drugs in our hospitals. Because of corruption, this road has not been constructed. Money has been given, and there's no road. You know, so we need to fight corruption. We need to demand accountability from our elected people. And I think that over there, so we've seen increasingly ordinary citizens reclaiming the space to speak about corruption, to raise their voices and begin to demand for accountability right from the grassroots. And let me say one thing about corruption. It's an insidious thing, you know, and so until you are able to conquer the immediate space, you can't be able to make progress at the wider space. So we need people to conquer corruption at this own immediate space, whether that immediate space means at family level, at community level, at school or places of work, until we are able to do those minute things. Because it's the results, the success of all those minute battles that we fight at our own levels
that will amount to little drops of water,
transform what people in the sciences says that you get a transformation from quantity to quality, which is what we want. So it's that aggregate thing that would first of all grow large. Secondly, will give citizens confidence that they are winning the battle. Because once you are not winning the battle, you feel frustrated, you feel that this thing probably can never succeed. But every element of success is important in terms of inspiring people to do more. And I think that that, for me, is the way that we should. And that is what government is missing. That I think that they just get the EFCC to arrest one politician and then parade him before the media. That's a success of a thing. It's okay. We see how EFCC system become even a mesh in terms of controversy, whether in fact the money they collect.
Accountability about the asset recovery and all of that. So there's this Mercator project which you manage, Mercator Fund which you manage on anti-corruption for social influencers. That project, to the best of our, have been going on for like 3 years now. So what are you doing differently with that social influencers accountability cohort? What are you doing differently, and what result have you seen coming in under that exercise?
Yeah. So as I said, that we really wanted to catalyze citizen voices to join the anti-corruption strategy, create that voice and also amplify it. So what we're doing there, which is different from other ways in which other civil society organizations are fighting corruption, is that we try to get people who have rooting in society in terms of having followers, in terms of influence.
Yeah, who have social influence.
Exactly. And we ask them to be creative and innovative. So what sort of new things, new ways of passing message, new ways of mobilizing citizens. So we engage people to do drama, to do poetry. These are things that ordinarily you don't associate with. We go for entertainment, you know, and using entertainment, using art, using creative responses. Then you are able to pass your own messages of trying to get citizens to raise this voice, to understand, to develop the capacity to engage in anti-corruption thing. And I think that that seems to be very well received in the various communities that we worked.
Thank you very much. That would be the size of our intervention on development focus with Jide Ojo on ITV. I want to thank Malam Wazi Yao for creating time out of his very tight schedule. Unfortunately, we didn't have sufficient time to go into your presentation on fake news and reporting corruption, which you presented yesterday. But suffice to say, we look forward to hosting you some other time when you are in town to talk more about the issue of citizen participation in governance and also accountability and transparency. Viewers, that will be the size of our program today. If you have enjoyed this episode, please join us next Wednesday when we bring you a fresh edition. Have a great day.